Hello folks, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In this video, we'll be discussing a current affair topic presented to you by your faculty, Sushma KP. So what is the topic that we will be looking into today? We will be discussing about the economic survey. Your economic survey of fiscal year 2025 speaks about the fact that the growth rate projected for your fiscal year 2026 is going to be between 6.3 to 6.8. And what other components have they spoken about? What is an economic survey? All of those we will be discussing in detail on the video. Alright, we will be discussing as to why is it in use, what is the relevance of it. That is your GS paper 3. Look at this. Economic Survey 2025, India's GDP growth rate. Meanwhile, India's GDP is projected to grow at a 4-year low pace of 6.4% in the current fiscal on weak manufacturing and investments. Why is this also we will be discussing. First, we will deal with a set of questions. With respect to economic survey, what is it? What is this economic survey? First and foremost, your economic survey is more like an outlook or a thorough examination of why the present prices, why the present scenarios, why the present policies are like this. What was the reason that presently all this is happening, and what will be the projected upcomings for the next upcoming year. What will be the projected ratio, that is, in what percentage will it grow, how will be the manufacturing sector, how will be the service sector, how the agriculture is supposed to grow, what can the people, what can the industry, what can people who are wanting to get into entrepreneurship to earn a legitimate income look into this financial year if they have to get into it, is what we will be getting from your economic survey. Which department prepares economic survey? Is Department of Economic Affairs, and which comes under your Ministry of Finance. This will be headed by your Chief Economic Advisor. He will be overlooking this. Okay. It comes under which ministry? It comes under Ministry of Finance. It will be tabled in which house? Will it be tabled in Lok Sabha or will it be tabled in Rajya Sabha? It will be tabled in both the houses of the parliament. Okay. One main thing is when. Usually, when is this economic survey released? This economic survey is released one day before the union budget. Which means on January 31st, this will be released before the union budget. Why? Why is it released one day before the union budget? Because this will give an insight as to what the budget might contain. What do I mean by this? For example, let's say in the economic survey, they've highlighted the manufacturing sector is not performing well. That is because of they'll also mention why. Global trade demand is reducing. So because of that. So what can you expect in the budget means there will be certain incentives or reforms related to your manufacturing sector so as to boost the manufacturing sector. Understanding? So this is like an outlook into the union budget. What is the purpose of this? Like we discussed, so that we will get an outlook of the year and then the prediction or forecast for the next upcoming year. When was this first presented? This was very first time presented in your 1951. Initially, it was presented alongside a union budget, but from your 1964 onwards, that is your 1960s onwards, it is presented one day before your union budget. This is about your what is economic survey. Now we will see what the economic survey of 2025 has in store for us. Before that, what has our chief economic advisor stated about our Economic Survey of the 2025, there is a strong external account, calibrated fiscal consolidation, and stable private consumption. What all of these words mean in future, we will be able to understand. Look at this. In the very beginning only we said that our GDP of this particular fiscal year is to be at 4-year low pace. In the very last year, if you see, the prediction of the economic survey was somewhere around 6.5% to 7% growth rate, including our own RBI had predicted around 6.5% growth rate. It was also believed that India will hit $4 trillion economy. That was the prediction. It was said that by 2027, India would have become the top 3 economies. But apparently, the store has something else in it for us, wherein this year the GDP growth rate is to be around 6.3 and 6.8, more specifically, somewhere around 6.4. Understanding? Now, look at this. This is also by your chief economic advisor, wherein they speak about fiscal discipline, strong external balance, supported by service trade, healthy remittances will contribute to the macroeconomic stability. Understanding? Now is where the things start. Your economic survey is given in the form of two parts, part A and part B. Your part B is more of, like I mentioned, your economic survey is released in two parts, part A, part B. Part A is more of comprehensive, more generalistic outlook as to how each particular, let's say, your manufacturing sector, how is it performing, service sector, how is it performing. Whereas when you come to part B, specifics within each sector, manufacturing sector pe each of them, how is the first, for a sustainable development, what does our economy need to do? First and foremost is deregulation. See, understand one thing, our investment, that is our manufacturing sector, is fairly performing on a low basis. Why? Because of less global demand. There is less global demand. In this, if private players have to come in for your manufacturing sector, pay even investments, private investments are also very much reduced. If both of this have to be tackled, then first thing we have to do is deregulation. Excessive bureaucratic control and also excessive regulation is making the investors turn away. Now, one thing we have to see with respect to deregulation, manufacturing, yeah, what is important like this. Now, one very important thing if you have to consider about deregulation or manufacturing, now more than ever the manufacturing sector we focusing becomes very important. I'll tell you why. Now, first and foremost, let's take this. Vikshit Bharat by 2047, that is, by the time our country hits 100 years of independence, by 2047 that is going to happen. We are claiming that we will become a developed country. If we have to become a developed country, then the manufacturing sector has to contribute at least 35%. So presently it is 31%. If this has to happen by 2047, then we need deregulation. This is not just important here. Another thing is, in our manufacturing sector, we need a lot of critical minerals, which are very much needed for our solar energy production also. Now, the geopolitical system is the way it is. Your China is trying to become the superpower of manufacturing. Your China is trying to become the superpower of manufacturing where it is providing artificial rates for their electric vehicles and it has flooded the market, which is giving a compromise or which is putting a setback on other domestic manufacturers like India. And one more advantage your China has is the critical mineral supply. India's dependence on critical mineral supply has increased by almost 40% by 2019 itself. We have been trying to move away from your fossil fuels. We are trying to generate cleaner, greener fuels, alternate renewable energy by trying to moving away from this. So initially, and even now, we have huge dependence on fossil fuels. We had to import, we had the burden of importing the fossil fuels. Now, from this, we are moving towards the import burden of critical minerals, which is very much needed for your manufacturing sector. Amidst this kind, the growing trend is there is severe competition for your manufacturing sector. Again, the severe competition is not coming from the developing countries but also from the developed countries. Like for example, your USA, especially with Trump coming back, your tariffs, etc., which is expected, they are trying and fighting to keep the businesses at home. They want to keep the businesses at home, which means what? Competition to India is coming from the for the manufacturing sector from both developing countries as well as your developed countries. When all of these issues are there, what India has to do is first and foremost it has to bring in deregulation, which will make the private players enter into this. Now, recently, with respect to USA, also you have seen the dollar price is soaring, the dollar prices are increasing. At the same point of time, their index came in where it stated that the unemployment rate is also decreasing. So, lucrative option is looking like your USA rather than developing countries. So, what are the investors doing? They're taking money from the developing country like India and going back to USA because that is offering lucrative benefits. So, if we have to fight this, then deregulation coupled with reforms at grassroots level are needed. All of this is very much needed so that the economic freedom of an individual increases for him to earn a legitimate income. This is about your manufacturing sector. And alongside this, now we are speaking about just manufacturing sector, right? When we see with respect to the unemployment rate is also increasing. Again, the same thing. If we have to visualize the Viksit Bharat by 2047, then we have to create at least 78.5 lakh non-farm jobs alongside 100% literacy. We have to bring in academic changes by involving technologies such as AI, robotics, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology. Why all this have to be brought in? Because people have to be skilled in this. See, your AI, whether we like it or not, it is going to be taking over. Now, based on the history, that is three industrial revolutions, change to the technology, that is change towards a particular technology is not always easy. It's a painful change, but the change is bound to happen. If we try to incorporate this into our education system, if we try to skill the people to this, then we will not be affected by the job market and the AI, because it's not supposed to be replacing you, which might happen if you don't skill you. Yes, so we have to incorporate this into our economy, into our education system. Make sure we give for 100% literacy, change your infrastructure. Understanding? Look at this. Chief Economic Advisor Ananta Nageshwaran, passing the era of rapid world trade growth clouds the outlook for India's export growth because historically India's export growth has been on beta play, meaning Domestic growth levers will be relatively more important than external ones. This is the takeaway. This is very important. Understanding? What do we mean by this? We will see. We just discussed how important it is for us to improve on our manufacturing sector, improve on the literacy, improve on the skilling portions. There are also certain global risks, like we mentioned with respect to critical minerals. Low production capacity has come in the solar energy sector, especially with respect to polysilicon, ingots, wafers. Again, like I told you, 40% import dependence on China on critical minerals. We are moving away from one fossil fuel import dependence to another critical mineral import dependence on China. Coupled with this, we discussed, right? Your developed countries as well as developing countries are trying to make sure they're trying to keep the businesses at home. Amidst all the changes that we keep speaking about, there are particular headwinds, which might obstruct the growth. What are those? Elevated geopolitical and trade uncertainties. Right now, as of we know, there are wars going on everywhere. Russia, Ukraine, or Israel, Hamas war. So the geopolitical scenario, if you see, it is in a very high tense state. Commodity prices, we have been seeing how the inflation prices are increasing. Another thing is consumer confidence is pretty much shaken about. And also, if we do have to stop this obstruct, the question also lies here, the answer also lies here. First thing is you have to increase and improve the consumer confidence. And second thing is, say with respect to urban and rural, here if you see the urban demand, the urban demand has relatively very much decreased. Why? Because of corporate wage stagnation. This was a very big difficulty. But if you see in 2024, especially in the second half, in the second half of 2023, we witnessed a sharp decline in your urban demand. For what? Corporate wage stagnation. But this was counterbalanced. This was easier to manage was because there was a consumption increase in your rural. Now, the same thing if we look for your 2025, the first half of 2025 is also projected to look good is because of two things. One, there is considerable reduction or softening of vegetable prices. And second thing is the kharif crops or the kharif harvest is ready. So this is projected to give a 2025, the first half, a good growth. Now, like I told you, 2024, the second half the urban was suffering, the demand was lower because of corporate wage stagnation. If the corporate wage picks up, then this also adds to it, then both rural and urban consumption also increases. Yes or no? Alongside that, this year food inflation presently is somewhere on the softening side. This also will keep a check on inflation. Understanding? Now, because we're speaking on the inflation, two main things about your core inflation is your energy and your food, oil, imports, all of those if you put it. On both these fronts, the inflation is trying to coming down. That is, it is somewhere keeping the inflation benign. It is arresting the inflation to one point. But again, the unpredictability, global scenarios, your commodity price shocks anytime might rise up, and that will provide us again a headwind. There is obstruction to growth. What will happen to food inflation? As of now, it is decreasing. That is, there is an arrest in the growth of inflation. Like we discussed, rural ka, the demand is increasing. Once the wage stagnation reduces in the urban, that also will get in place. And also we have bumper kharif crops ready, harvest is ready. Alongside, we also have a good expected rabi crop outcome also. Look at this. The core inflation is from your global energy and commodity prices, where both have been softened. But again, the headword, like as we spoke, the obstruction can come from your global political and economic uncertainties. Now, these are certain areas where your economic survey has focused. We will also see what those are. India needs to develop climate resilient crop varieties. For example, India is speaking, that is the economic survey is speaking about your ways you have to move towards away from fertilizers. Look at this also. Policy shift to cereal output boost pulses edible oils, which means move away from fertilizer, water intensive crops, and also surplus crops like your cereals. You move away from this to boost pulses, edible oils, tomato, onion, potato. You have to do in such a manner that is climate resilient. Again, we said just now, yes, the rural can pick up the demand. We have good harvest of crops ready. Rabi crops is also set out to be on a good outcome. All this depends on your weather. If we have adverse weather conditions, then all of us goes down the tank. Understanding? And also, look at this. As we discussed from the very beginning, accelerate private investment in critical sectors to achieve the goal of Vikshit Bharat by 2047. We have discussed that in detail. Lower mental health. See, in this, the chief economic advisor has specifically stated that everything about the work hours, work culture, the way you eat. Now, when I say the way you eat, the dependence on ultra processed foods has increased. Your work hours are kept so long that by the time you come back, you're so tired, you just want to crash. The chief economic advisor has even stated that the people or the individuals who have less usage of your social media, enough or close relationship with your friends, family, at the same point of time have time to exercise, eat healthy, they are tend to have lower mental health issues, and that will increase the overall productivity. Okay, and it also speaks about your data center market growth, which is expected to grow by 11.6 billion by 2032. And this also we discussed about the impact of AI on workforce. This is both pro as well as con. We have both positive, we have both negative. This can affect the employment, but at the same point of time, how we can stop the AI from taking our jobs. You know, the typical movies where the rise of the technology, if you have to stop that, then one of the ways you have to do is by through skilling, reskilling, and upskilling. And one more main thing is you prepare the job market, that is you prepare the workforce. How do you prepare the workforce? 100% literacy, and this literacy also, the education infrastructure should be changed. The employment should be based on market driven. Understanding? India's health expenditure and reduction in out of pocket expenditure, example is your Ayushman Bharat. With the rollout of these kind of schemes, the lower rung, that is the 40% of the lower rung of the society, have been able to reduce the out of pocket expenditure. So this has saved almost 1.2 lakh crores. Understanding? India's service export is set to grow at accelerate to 12.8%. Again, this is a good thing. That is, we are in the top 5 countries of service sector growth. Here, the service sector is also called as the old warehouse because of its significant contribution, 50.8% of the contribution to the GDP. more to the gross value added. It also speaks about economic survey on unemployment rate and labor participation. If you see unemployment rate, it is very minimal reduction is there on unemployment. Very minimal reduction is seen. Not much of a difference, but very minimally. If at all India has to become Vikshit Bharat by 2047, then it has to keep on producing additional employment opportunities. And at the same point of time, it also has to look into your manufacturing sector, where it has to grow at 35% compared to your present 31% to reach Vikshit Bharat at 2047. Economic surveys this year is published in the form of 13 chapters. The 13 chapters are state of the economy, monetary and financial sector development, external sector, getting the FDI right, and they've also spoken about your prices and inflation, understanding the dynamics. Deregulation drives growth. We have discussed these concepts. Investment and infrastructure, industry all about the business reforms, investments, services, old war horse, agriculture and food management, that is the sector of the future. This is where we spoke about climate resilient food crops, climate and environment, social sector extending reach and driving empowerment, employment and skill development, and labor in the AI. These are the topics that have been discussed in the video from the economic survey. We've reached the end of the content. If you like our content, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button and share it along with your friends. Thank you.